Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Jo Wheatley, and my friend and co-host Zoe Hawkins.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here again with another podcast episode. And this week we're talking about conversation structures in coaching. And one of the reasons we're bringing this week is because when people start coaching, they're all about give me the tools, give me the structures, help me out, help me to work out what coaching is. But obviously, as you grow and develop as a coach, this can change and evolve quite rapidly. And also people, I think, have a lot of questions around what they should be doing in coaching in relation to structures. So we thought we'd just spend some time talking about this and seeing what we can bring for you.
So I think a good place to start is what do we even mean when we talk about structures in a coaching conversation? Because when people are thinking about training to be a coach, they're like, well, what is there to learn? How is it different from a conversation that I normally have? Or I've been coaching for years. So what we mean when we talk about structures are models like the GROW model, which is about having that structure where you're identifying the goal, you're supporting the client to really explore their reality, then moving into the options or the opportunities for them to achieve their goal. And then finally, they're making that decision around, right, what is the way forward for me? What is the action that I'm going to take? There are other models as well, like CLEAR and Oscar. There's two Oscar models, one with a K and one with an S. And we've done podcasts and videos on our YouTube channel on those that are very popular. We also mean drawing on different activities from different coaching psychologies. So that might be transactional analysis, where we are talking about things like the OK Corral, or talking about ego states, different models, so conversation structures that we provide our students in order to be able to help the coachee get new insights into their problem, which gives them, or their challenge, which gives them opportunities for new actions to take forward.
Yeah. And even if you are having a coaching conversation, you're not following one of those particular models, all coaching conversations have a structure. And that is what makes it different to an everyday conversation. And I think when people come into coaching in those early days onto a program, as you said, Jo, there are some people who are like, well, I've been coaching for years. I know how to coach. I'm here just to sort of top up my learning. And then those who are coming brand new and are like a sponge for everything. Everybody learns something on a coaching training program, because coaching, there is a huge amount of skill and science behind how to have the most effective and powerful conversation. And obviously structures and activities are one way in which you can bring some of the depth into your conversations. But what we see when people start is there'll be those camp of people who really welcome the structures because it provides a safety net and helps people to know, right, what do I do now? I've asked those questions. What are the next questions I'm going to ask? And then there are those who really resist the structure because they are good listeners, absolutely, and they have been asking great questions, absolutely, but they can feel that the unlearning process is actually really uncomfortable, and it's often with an energy to want to be so many steps ahead and diving into the depth of coaching conversations. So I think what I'm saying here is when you join a coaching training program, there is a layering process that we go through, which is to help people to really nail the basics, really master those foundations, because by mastering the foundations, when you come on to the much deeper work later on in the program, you can become an expert at that too, because you have strong foundations in place.
Yeah, when you talk about that's the structure to a coaching conversation, you've got those things that we described that may form part of that in between, or might not. We'll talk about that in a minute. But at the start of a coaching conversation, you would do what we call contracting. So that is agreeing what success looks like from the conversation, how long you've got for it, what is in scope, what is out of scope, how you can work best together in order to achieve that outcome. And then at the end of the conversation, you'll also have that bit of evaluation, that opportunity for feedback, what was really impactful in the conversation, and exploring that both from the coach and the coachee's perspective. So you have those kind of bookends to the conversation. And then in between is what you do. And as you were saying, so that the resistance, I also think, is because when you discover something new, like if you're somebody that likes to feel like an expert, in something, and all of a sudden you are learning something new and you don't feel like an expert. There can be that kind of the feeling of a risk of exposure when you're practicing something that you feel like you're not very good at that point. And I think there's also people can feel like, well, this isn't mine, so when I'm saying it, it doesn't feel like me and it feels stilted and awkward, and I just don't like that feeling. So that might be happening at a conscious level or an unconscious level. But really, this is about learning the foundations, as you say, so that you can see for yourself and experience what is impactful and effective for the coachee, and what are the ones that maybe don't feel like you. But ultimately, the goal of a coaching training program is to really discover the very best coach that exists within you. And we do that through offering opportunities to practice these semi-structures as well as the free coaching. And when we talk about free coaching, we'll say to people, okay, right, we would like you to have a conversation about this, and you can draw on all of the things that we've done before and all of the knowledge and the skills and competencies that you had before. And some people are like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. I feel like I don't know anything anymore. I've literally lost everything that I've ever known. And other people are like, great, I can just free range with this.
Yeah. And I think that is ultimately the journey that we want all our coaches to go on. So the structures that are provided are there for good reason, because they work. They make conversations incredibly effective. And some of the tools and activities that you will learn from the different, methodologies that Joe talked about earlier invite you to be able to coach at depth with your clients. Now, once you kind of move beyond the container of a training program and into your coaching practice, and if you become a practicing coach, obviously with your own clients, you may still use these semi-structures. And the way that I tend to use them would be sharing a concept with a client like Grow, like Clear, so that they can learn that structure for themselves and then apply that with their team. So it becomes twofold. Yes, we're going to use the structure together, and I'm going to share with you what the structure is, so you know what we're doing together. And in doing so, you have the experience of what it's like, so you can go on and use it yourself. That's how I tend to use those coaching structures. Do I use like Clear as a coaching model in my coaching? No, not really. But I do have a structure to my coaching, but it's like a combination of all the different models that I've used. And when a client arrives to a session and we always begin by checking in, doing some contracting, and establishing what the client would like to get out of that session. That's like an absolute key point that all coaching conversations need to have. And we will always end in actions, as you've kind of described there around the bookends. And then what happens in the middle is intuitive. It's based on all of the training that I've ever done as a coach. It's me really listening and tuning into my clients' needs. So all the skills that I have developed as a coach. And then I'm drawing on that vast amount of experience and also toolkit to be in the best service of my clients. And that's what we want all our coaches to be able to get to. So absolutely, when you become a qualified coach, you're unlikely to be wedded to one of these coaching models and these structures, but you will understand the structure that your own coaching holds, so that you can provide a safe container for your clients.
Yeah, and I think where the structures can be really useful as well are to prevent coaches from really going down an avenue of exploring the client's story, because they are coaching structures, they keep it focused on the here and now, and the future. So getting that discipline is just so important, so that in the future you'll be having a conversation and you'll think, I think this could be really useful for my client. And then you might pick a couple of bits, or you'll just know the essence of where you're going with that. And it is very much about the do with, not do to, which is both where the structures can be really helpful or could come across as having something done to you. And of course, that is what you want to avoid, because it is that co-created space. So what's going to be most effective for your client? Well, you need to learn about, how do they learn? How do they want to be in relationship with you? Are they somebody that is a theorist, for example? And so they really want you to share, like, well, what are you doing with me right now? I want to know how you're doing that. That would be like you and I, because we're like, well, we want to learn how you're doing what you're doing. because we love the learning aspect of it as well. So I'm going to show up as a coachee, and I also want to understand what you're doing. Other people won't. They're not interested in that. They just want to get their outcome, and they're happy with that. So that understanding your client is fundamental to everything you do and what's going to work most effectively for them.
I think what you mentioned there around the coaching the story and how structures, can help to keep you on track with coaching the person rather than the story. I'll just share a little bit more about that, because people listening might be like, oh, what is that? What does it mean to coach the story versus coach the person? Coaching the story is where you'll be information gathering. So that's the kind of, so what happened next? And then what did they say? And how did you feel about that? And what did you do next? So you're kind of information gathering about the story. Whereas coaching the person is more around the impact that whatever has happened in your client's life has had on, your client. And actually, you don't really need to know the story as a coach. That's kind of irrelevant. And where coaches can ending up in rabbit holes where they don't need to be is because they're fascinated by what the client is saying, and they're getting drawn into the drama, I guess, of what might be happening in a client's life. And that is a fundamental difference between a coaching conversation and an everyday conversation. Because if you're out with your friends and you're walking in the park and your friend is talking about perhaps how they've had a horrible week at work and their boss is really mean and they've got deadlines coming out of their ears, you'll be saying, oh gosh, that sounds really terrible. What did they say to you? Like how did you respond? What did you say back? That story. And obviously we engage in story all the time with our friends. And so when you transition into coaching, the structures can provide you with a container so that you ask more impact-based questions around, so how do you feel, when you're at work, when you're in that relationship? How do you want that relationship to be? What do you need to do in order to show up differently in this relationship? It's much more about the person that you're working with rather than whatever story they may have been through that week.
And essentially it's solution focused and future focused, and it's, as you say, and it's about the individual, and it's a subtle but really significant shift in the focus of a conversation, whilst also needing to still demonstrate that you have empathy and and understanding about the impact that is having. And as a coach, you can work content free with your coaching client, which means they don't need to be telling you all of the answers even to the questions or giving you all of that story. So there are some really powerful ways to work together with the client. Now, some coaches will say, well, if you use semi-structures, then you're not very advanced at all. That would be a perspective of some people. It doesn't really matter. You've got to find the way that you want to work best with your clients. And I sometimes coach in a very free way and a very intuitive way, drawing on all of the experience. And as I was saying earlier, and sometimes we use some of our tools in a more structured way with our clients. If you've got a client, for example, who they're just explaining to you that they are really confused, there's a lot going on, they can't get their thoughts together, and they want to get some sense of order, that may be an example of a time where you think, right, how about if we use this thing here, this is the purpose of it, this is what we'll do together. And if your client says, yeah, that sounds really good, then it may be very useful for them. If they say, oh, and I don't like the sound of that just sounds a bit rigid, can I just talk some more about this thing that I'm on? Then you make that decision, together. That's the contracting piece, really. And you'll get information about how they need you to be as a coach right in the very beginning. If you ask those questions in the chemistry conversation about how do you want to work best together, what do you know about yourself and what do you need from me? And if you use a pre-coaching questionnaire like we do, there are questions in that again, which will help the coachee to learn about how do they want to use the time together in the coaching conversations.
I think one place where structures are particularly important is when you're working with emotions. And obviously we've just developed our emotions coaching practitioner training with this in mind, because it's one area where coaches can end up going down those rabbit holes of story because they are compassionate and they are empathetic, and often emotional situations will evoke all the story and drama that comes with it. And it can trigger a rescuer in us as coaches and in anybody else. When somebody is, sharing emotions that feel difficult, either for the client or for the coach, it can trigger that, oh gosh, I need to save my client from this. And obviously, as coaches and practitioners, we learn that that's not a helpful place to be, and we get ourselves back on track, but it can lead to some stumbling in the coaching conversation. So what we've developed within the emotions coaching practitioner training are semi-structures for conversations, different tools and activities that not only help the practitioner and the coach to feel like they're safe and they've got something to work with that's going to compassionately guide them through a conversation, but also the client gets to understand different ways in which they can process their emotions and get value from the conversation. And it also be connected to action and not just about discussing how I feel for feeling's sake, but how do you get the valuable information out of emotions that are being experienced within the coaching relationship. So, where you are uncertain, perhaps as a coach, or you lack experience as a coach, structures, semi-structures, coaching activities can also be an excellent place to go to be able to support your clients with their goals and their coaching outcomes.
That feeling when you first start training to be a coach, where all of a sudden you have got all of these semi-structures and you're like, oh, I love this. I've got all of these different ways that I can use to help other people. The hard bit for me is going to be working out which one do I use. And we've talked before, haven't we, about when we did our original coaching training, you desperately want your tutors to say, we'll use this one in this situation, that one in that situation, and that one in that situation. And they didn't provide that. And we're like, well, why not? We couldn't understand it at that stage. Whereas actually now on the other side of it, as the trainers, we have a much better understanding of the reasons for that. But that amazing feeling where you all of a sudden you've got a whole folder full of different things, tools that you can draw on for different situations. And also you have it for yourself. And I think that is an amazing gift to have as a coaching training, is to know that whatever situations you're encountering in your own life, you can use these things to self-coach you. And we've had huge benefit, haven't we? Life gives us different experiences at different times. And yeah, certainly for me anyway, that has been a huge benefit that continues to that I continue to receive the benefits from, and being able to learn how to self-coach. Not to say that I don't also benefit from external coaching, but yeah, having those resources has really helped.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also, yes, I will use them when there is something going on, but I will also use them proactively. And I think that's the other thing about coaching, is it's not always about when you're in a challenge or when you're in some kind of crisis. It's about goals, isn't it? It's about, what do I want for my life? How do I want my life to be? And once a year, I will often get out like what we call the wheel of life. I get my values. I have a look, right? How's it all going? Where am I feeling some tension? Where is there opportunity? Set some goals, create a vision board, move forward. Now, that might sound like a really nerdy thing to do if you're kind of not in this space. But for me, that's how else would I want to kind of live my life? Like, it makes sense to me to be able to apply everything that I've kind of learned into my own life. And it's not just me there that benefits, but my family benefit as well, because I can get them involved in their own kind of thoughts. And I think that's the thing with structures, semi-structures, coaching, personal development. Like, it all has a place, and it is down to the practitioner to decide how they want to use that and how they want to apply it, both for themselves and also in their client work.
So if you're thinking, oh, I'd love to have some semi-structures, so these sound good, these sound like they could really help me in my role, whether you're a leader or somebody that's thinking about adding coaching into what you already offer or starting out as a coach, then you're welcome to come and join our coaching cohorts. You can find all of the details on our website, igcompany.co.uk.